Good evening and welcome to this new and Old Malden Neighbourhood Planning Subcommittee, whether here in person or watching on the webcast. My name is Councillor Leslie Heap and I'm chairing this meeting this evening. In the event of an emergency and the sounding of an alarm, the emergency evacuation procedure is to leave by the main staircase located behind me and congregate at the front of the building. Anyone requiring assistance should remain in their seats and an officer will assist you from the building. This meeting is being filmed for live broadcast on the Council's YouTube channel and an archive version will be available to view on the Council's website after the meeting finishes. The broadcast will be suspended during any adjournments in proceedings and if the committee resolve to consider information as exempt business. Please can everyone present in the meeting ensure their mobile phones are turned off or in silent mode for the duration of the meeting. Thank you. Right, just to introduce you to the councillors who are on the committee and the people tonight. I have first of all, Councillor Andrew Sillett on my right for Coombe Vale Ward.
Good evening.
Then Councillor James Giles for Green Lane and St James's Ward.
Good evening.
Myself, Councillor Leslie Heap. Then I have Councillor Lynn Henderson on my left for Motsford Park and Old Malden East. And finally, Councillor Massimi for Old Malden Ward. I also have Sam Nichols, our clerk for this evening from Dem Services, and on my left, Toby Felton, Planning Officer, who will be presenting the application. Members of the public are reminded that the planning application process is constrained by the need to have regard to current planning policy at national, regional and local levels, as well as other material planning considerations, including case law precedent. The decision-making process is often described as quasi-judicial because local planning authorities have to act reasonably within the bounds of planning law and the above considerations and are not free to determine planning applications simply because of the weight of public opinion. There is a registration scheme for residents and applicants wishing to participate on the planning applications that are considered by this committee. Members of the public who have already registered to speak will be invited to come forward to the table in front of the public gallery at the appropriate point. First of all, the minutes of the last meeting. Are members happy to approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 7th of September 2023? Agreed. Thank you. Members are also asked to declare any disclosable pecuniary interests or any other registrable or non-registrable interest relevant to the items on this agenda. Do members have any declarations of interest to please indicate? Councillor Giles.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have a non-registrable interest to declare, which is that this evening, seemingly, two of the objectors, I know personally, one of them is a neighbour to my grandmother. However, I can confirm I've not spoken about this application with either of the two objectors, and so I don't feel I need to withdraw from the meeting at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Giles. So, moving on to the item, which is planning application 23/01158/full. It's the land to the northeast of Woodfield Gardens in New Malden. The proposal is for the erection of 3 new residential dwellings, Class C3, with associated hard and soft landscaping, parking and associated infrastructure. Thank you, Toby. If you'd like to present the application.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so here's the application site located. The access, you can see it in red, access to off the corner of Woodfield Gardens. We've got Cromwell Avenue open space to the north of it, and the rear of properties in Queen's Road to the east. This shows you an aerial image of that site. This shows the access from Woodfield Gardens. So you can see it's basically the sort of concrete two sort of three stripes basically, and the outer two is basically sort of concrete. So that takes you the route through. There's also a right-of-way access from Queen's Road, but that's not being used in this application. Within the site, this is looking west back towards the access and towards 13 Woodfield Gardens. This is looking east towards the rear of houses on Queen's Road. And this is looking south towards the access and the rear of 11 Woodfield Gardens. So let me just, so as you come into the access, so actually if you're looking at this from this side, you have 13 on the right and 11 on the left. So it's an application for three four-bedroom dwellings with rear gardens. Each would have one off-street vehicular parking space per unit, refuse recycling storage and cycle storage for 2 cycles per unit. This shows you, particularly on the bottom image, where the terrace of 3 houses would be sited, and this gives you a bit more information. You can see, I suppose, particularly on the ground floor to the left of each unit is the garage space where the cars would park, and then you've got the access area. You've also got a turning head to the left of those houses where vehicles can come in full gear and turn around and then go out. You can see also the sort of distances from the boundaries, which is 3 point something on the left and 2 point something on the right. And the rear gardens there are delineated, and the measurements are shown on there, which range, I think, 102, I can see, and 86 is the other one. Here the ground floor, so there's garage, living area, private garden. And then we go up to the first floor. There's three bedrooms here. It's worth noting that I'm looking at the top image. Look at the southern elevations are obscure glaze to avoid overlooking to the property, which I think is 13 Woodfield Gardens. And then you go up to the top level, and you've got the master bedroom, ensuite, and the sort of terrace is kind of enclosed within the roof slope. This just shows you the roof plan, which is basically 3 sort of pitched sort of roofs, but you'll see that in this. So there's that's how the properties appear. So maximum height there of 10.4 metres, 5.9 metres eaves. The 5.9 metres eaves is about the same height as the surrounding houses. The maximum height of the ridge is slightly higher than the surrounding properties. And this shows you a view from the rear. So these would be clear glazed windows. These would look out towards Cromwell open space. And these just show you the side elevations, one of which would be in line with I think 11 Woodfield Gardens, and the other would sort of be at the end of properties in Queen's Road. this, there is a line there which is extremely faint, but it basically shows that when you're taking the angle from the properties in Queen's Road, the houses don't intersect the 25-degree angle, and that therefore confirms that there would still be significant amount of light left and into those properties. It wouldn't have a significant impact on light. It just shows some of the landscaping. So there's sort of hedging proposed along the southern elevation and then some of the eastern elevation, and you've got there's a tree at the end of the site, which, well, it's actually, I think, to the rear of the site, but that's unaffected by this. So you see 33 new trees planted around the site. And here we go, the trees, tree protection. This will ensure that those trees are protected. This just gives you some of the separation distances. So you've got 7.5 metres at the front, 3.5 metre gap at the side, then 22.7 metres to Queen's Road, and the sort of 8 metre depth of the gardens. Just in terms of the sort of site ownership, really, just to sort of show in relation to the sort of access road that it's not quite as clear as I hoped it might be, that the red line basically is a continuous red line of basically equal sort of width that allows you access into the square part of the site. This shows you vehicular access tracking to show that vehicles can get into the site. In fact, it's been tracked for a 7.5 tonne box van, which would be used for construction purposes, but obviously generally it's going to be just cars going in and out there. So just in terms of refuse arrangements, you may have noted that we've secured via a legal agreement that the refuse will be presented to Woodfield Gardens on the day of collection and taken back into the site on that same day. The stars are there just really sort of shows the guidance. Our refuse guidance says actually that there would be collection by the bin men up to the green star, but speaking to our waste officer today, he said basically there's an expectation that it's presented sort of onto the pavement. So, and then the brown star is where building regulations would allow the distance to be 25 metres, but this is basically these will be presented to Woodfield Gardens each morning of bin collection day, and then move back in at the end of the day. This just shows the construction details, construction routing, and working hours. Why permission to be granted. So let me just take you through some other points if there's anything. So just in terms of the site in general, it was some time ago, it seems a significant amount of time ago that it was used for allotments, but we can't find any sort of recent records of that being the case. It's not designated as open space use in the council's core strategy. Other points just worth noting in terms of Surface water drainage, our surface water drainage officer has looked at this, and there will be 17 cubic metres of underground storage with a proposed runoff rate of 2 litres per second. This would be able to contain a 1 in 30 storm event and a 1 in 100 plus 40% climate change storm event. So that's going on underground, and the conditions would secure that. There would also be, in terms of ecology officers reviewed this, they're happy with this, including the native hedge and 8 backed bricks. Tree officers happy with the proposals. Just one sort of clarification in the report. There's a bit of confusion between how many parking spaces is the maximum for this site. The correct answer is that it's a maximum of 1 space per unit for a site which has a public transport accessibility level of 2 and is in outer London and is 3+ bedrooms. There is a contradiction somewhere within the report which you may or may not have spotted, but the correct thing is 1, which is precisely what is provided here. And obviously, the 3 residential houses will be a significant benefit of the proposal, and therefore the recommendation is to approve subject to conditions and also the legal agreement. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Toby. Okay, so moving on, we have 4 registered speakers on this item. Christine Sherlock, Patricia Mason and Lynn Palfrey are speaking as objectors this evening, and Isabel McGeever, if I've got that correct, will be speaking in favour. So welcome to the meeting, Christine, Patricia and Lynn. You're already seated, which is great. Please can you address the committee with your comments? You are reminded you have 5 minutes to speak between you, and we'll let you know when 1 minute is remaining, just so you can kind of draw to the conclusions. So when you're ready, off you go. Thank you.
Thank you. The original site was marshland, as was Queen's Road and Woodfield Gardens. It is a high-risk flood area. The ecology appraisal stated that the site was 500 metres away from a water body, but in fact it is 250 metres east of Beverley Brook. Also, the PEA states that the site had been cleared in advance of the assessment. In July 2007, the site was under 2 feet of rainwater. 3 roads flooded across and nearby gardens were underwater. This happened again in 2016 and in 2021 when Mr. Pullen of 11 Woodfield Gardens logged this. The current site absorbs rainwater, as does the vegetation. If it were built on, the underground drainage system would be the responsibility of the owners of the new properties. Should the drainage system fail, the owners could be at work, away, or not even live there. Us residents would be unable to do anything about it. Climate change will bring wetter winters and hot, dry spells in summer. Number 79 Queen's Road has had 2 lots of subsidence in the past. By building on this land, we are concerned about damage and subsidence to our 90 to 100-year-old properties. A land investigation of the site was made before the autumn rains came. Numbers 81 to 85 Queen's Road object to the blocking out of natural daylight, being overlooked, and have security concerns. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I intend to voice my concerns about the unsuitability of access to the proposed building site, both from Queen's Road and from Woodfield Gardens. Accessing the site from between numbers 79 and 81 Queen's Road would be impractical as it's very narrow. Large, noisy construction vehicles would pass very close to the houses, impinging on privacy and risking damage to property. The resident of number 81 is concerned about the safety of his children and their pets. He also requires access to his back garden to park his work van securely. However, my greatest worry is the very real danger posed to all road users, as HGVs and proposed future residents will need to cross the pavement. Large numbers of children use Queen's Road on their way to 2 local schools. Safety is paramount. Introducing any extra vehicles to Queen's Road would increase the traffic problems that exist already in this road. It's a cul-de-sac with cars parked on both sides of the road, as there are very few driveways. In Woodfield Gardens, the problems in accessing the site replicate those in Queen's Road. Mr. Habib of 13 Woodfield Gardens is unhappy about his potential loss of privacy and the fact that large vehicles would cross his property. An added risk factor is that the exit from the site is on a sharp bend in the road. With cars parked on both sides of the proposed exit and opposite an area of frequently flooded road, I feel that this poses further risk.
Come on, love, that's a fella. I live at number 9 Woodfield Gardens, next door to 11 Opposy that has been mentioned earlier today, this evening. So I am also well over 80, and I very much against what is going ahead. Yeah, the fact is the noise is something I really don't want to enjoy for the next 6-9 months, whatever. And also pollution from the lorries coming down off the A3 down to number 9 and 11 and 13, which we're going on from, I think from 9 till 6 or 8 till 6 during the working week. I'm also concerned about damage to existing nearby homes, which of course is mine, and to Habib, who's behind me here, number 13.
Sorry, your time is up now. Thank you.
Oh dear, that's not very good, is it? Right.
Thank you.
Oh.
Ladies, would you like to just go back to your seats in the public gallery, please? And I'd like to welcome Isabel McGeever, who's speaking on behalf of the applicant. You can leave your things there if you wish. No, I need that because I need it all. Oh, sorry.
That's right. They sleep not.
Thank you, Isabel. If you'd like to come forward, thank you. So you can now address the committee with your comments. Reminded you also have 5 minutes to speak, and we will let you know when 1 minute is remaining so that you can draw up to your conclusion and that. Okay. So when you're ready, the mic's always on there. So
I think so, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Cool. Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to address the committee this evening, and thank you, Toby, for your presentation. I would like to use this time to briefly reiterate the conclusions drawn in the officer's report, which confirms officers' support for the scheme and identifies a number of key benefits associated with the proposals. The proposals have been subject to positive pre-app discussions with officers, and a number of points raised were addressed within the submission scheme. The proposed development will deliver 3 new family-sized homes, contributing towards an identified local need and supported strongly by policy. The new homes will also be highly energy efficient and modern. The proposals will also ensure that surface water runoff from the site is reduced through on-site attenuation and diversion to main sewers. This will improve surface water flooding in the local area with a 50% reduction in runoff, which also meets the 1 in 100-year flood events that Toby explained there. The proposals will also ensure that there is a 24% net gain in biodiversity at the site and will meet the 0.4 urban greening factor, which is a benchmark set in the London plan. The proposed development will deliver a number of new trees on the site and ensure existing trees are protected. I think there's 33 new trees, just by the way. The proposals will also ensure that amenity of surrounding occupiers is preserved and quality of accommodation is maintained, with all homes maintaining their daylight sunlight in accordance with BRE guidelines. Furthermore, we have received no objections from statutory or technical consultees, including highways, ecology, trees or planning policy. And most importantly, the Council's Green Spaces Officer has advised that the site does not have any allocations and has confirmed that the site is not identified as an allotment. The site represents an opportunity for Kingston and the local new Malden community to provide some sustainably located homes on a small site. The London Plan and Greater London Authority have in recent years placed even more emphasis on the importance of delivery of small sites can do in achieving London's ever-growing housing targets. In summary, we agree with the officer's conclusion. The application scheme would be in accordance with the development plan, and the 3 additional new homes would provide a positive contribution to the council's housing target, which is given significant weight. It is on this basis that we support the recommendation of the officers of the council and trust that members of the committee agree with their conclusions and resolve to grant planning permission this evening. Thanks.
Thank you. Well within time. You took just over 2 minutes. Thank you. If you'd like to return to your seat. So now I will ask members of the committee if they have any clarification questions for the objectors, and then I'll call them forward. Yes, would you like to come forward, please, for questions? Thank you. Okay, so I've got well, it depends if you're all going to reply. I mean, if you're going to all reply, then all come to the desk, yes. Yeah. So I had Councillor Giles, then Councillor Massimi. I'm sorry. Oh, so this is just questions for the objectors. So I had Councillor Giles and Councillor Henderson. So you have 5 minutes between you to speak. So, you know, just keep it on point and then you'll both get to have a reply. So Councillor Giles first and then Councillor Henderson. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have just one question for the objectors, which is, can they shed any light, having been residents of the road for some time, on when, if ever, the site has been used as allotments? Because from the report, the applicant contends that since their time of owning it since 1967, it's never been allotments.
Yes, you reply?
Yes, I can reply. It was used quite a lot in the 1970s and the 80s and the 90s until my father died in 2020.
Thank you. Councillor Henderson, your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned flooding in 2007, 2016 and 2021.
Yes.
And the other years, were they flooding as well?
It's reasonable? When we get, well, prior to that, of course, it was marshland. My mother told me that, I mean, obviously she would be 106 if she were alive now, but she remembers from being a young lady that the site was a marshland, including the Queen's Road area and Woodfield Gardens. And our next door neighbour at number 87 did an extension to his home, and he was almost chest high in water when he was doing that.
Okay, thank you.
And that wasn't that long ago either. About 5 years ago, 6 years ago.
Thank you very much. Any more questions of the objectors? No? Okay, thank you. You may return to your seats. Thank you very much. Sorry, there's a lot of getting up and sitting down in this sort of...
Is there another thing I could state, actually, that is relevant to the water side of things?
Yeah, you were in time. Yes, go ahead.
Okay. More recently, it's when we get the flash flooding of about 2 or 3 days in a row. Mm-hmm. Okay, and it's consistent rain. Okay.
Thank you very
That's
much.
when we get the flooding. Thank you.
Right, do any members of the committee have questions to clarify to the applicant this time? Same conditions. I'll let Councillor Massimi go first, then Councillor Giles, then Councillor Henderson. Isabel, if you'd like to come to the desk, thank you. So the same 5 minutes, so we'll spread the 5 minutes between the three of you so we get all the questions in. Right, Councillor Massimi, please, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair. Good evening. I only have one question so far, and you did mention earlier something that was a light bulb moment. I'm looking in the report and I don't see any EPC report or any high efficiency around the building. I might have missed that, but you mentioned this, so can you please highlight me, tell me what you consider high efficiency, what will be the scoring on the new EPC rating, and where this come from, because I don't have it unless I missed it. Thank you.
So EPC isn't actually a planning requirement, so we haven't been required to provide any of that detail. I mean, we have to meet, but there'll be building regs requirements, and again, that's not planning, so I'm not an expert on that, I'm afraid, but they will have to meet energy efficiency ratings by being a new building. But I can't, I'm afraid I can't really comment on that.
Okay. You mentioned high energy efficiency, not
Yeah.
energy efficiency. Just why I wanted to really clarify what you mean by high energy efficiency.
I think I said sustainable. Let me check. Yeah, I mean, they will be by nature highly energy efficient because they're new.
So I could assist. Is this to do with heating? How are the three properties to be heated?
I can't actually
'Cause
remember the
that's
detail.
not in the report.
Is it not in the DAS?
Well, I couldn't find it, but that was one of my questions. But while you're on heating, I just thought I would chip in.
I'm not 100% sure off the top of my head, I'm afraid.
So ground air source heat pumps. PV
It will be
panels.
whatever's required from like a building regs
Right,
perspective.
so as it's a new build.
Yeah.
Okay. Perhaps Toby has something on that. Okay.
Yeah.
Giles, you had your hand up.
I did, thank you. Paragraph 7.5 of the report says that the applicant, which you're representing, contends the site is unused vacant land that during the time of ownership since 1967 has not been used for allotments. Yet the planning application prior in 1974 had two reasons for rejection, one of which was that it would result in the loss of allotment space, which would be detrimental to the community. Now, I certainly wasn't around in 1974. I don't think you were either. But I wonder if you might be able to shed some light on that, because there's clear discrepancy between what you're contending and actually what our planning database shows.
Yeah, I mean, so with the data, should I talk? Yeah, cool. So just with the information I've obviously been provided with by my client, they had no knowledge that it had been used as an allotment, is my understanding. That's still the case. So I don't have any other information other than the fact that they, as the owner, had no knowledge that the site had been used as an allotment.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Giles. Councillor Henderson.
I have to be quick. I just want to understand
Right.
what the plan is in the front of, with the driveway. Are you going to make sure it's level between 11 and the driveway in? I mean, I've seen a mock-up of the design, but what I'm probably concerned about is whether we end up with a 6-inch lip. And so what is the intention there?
I'm pretty sure the intention is to keep it, accessible for everyone. I think, as you'll have seen on that red line, the actual access road is owned and is part of the title that my client owns and the applicant owns. So that is, their ownership. But I don't think there's any intention to make it impossible for people to access their land, because I'm pretty sure there's a right of access or something, across that. So yeah, it will be dealt with at a very detailed, plan stage. But I'm sure they can.
Quickly ask, is that access point, is that going to be redone and made up?
Yeah, I think there's on the landscaping
As well
plans.
as the bits going
If
into the
there's like a
properties.
detail of what we see as being the materiality for that access road. should be somewhere on one of the plans. I can't remember off the top of my head what exactly it is, but it will show, it'll be a new surface, basically, not what the current track is.
Thank you. I have another small question. The garages, will there be space to park a car in front of the garage, or will they have to get them off the road, off the pathway completely and go in the garage for parking?
Yeah, exactly. So the garage is the space. So like if you were to park in front of it, you'd be blocking the rest of the manoeuvrability of the site. So yeah.
No, thank you for the clarification. Thanks. Anybody else want any more questions?
Time, Chair.
Thank you. Right, thank you, Isabel. If you could return to your seat, that's great. Can I go back to Toby now if you'd like to sweep up on any of those contributions of the applicants or the objectors? Thank you.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Chair. Just in terms of, well, I suppose in terms of trying to shed some more light on the use of this site, I did speak to the council's Green Spaces team. They haven't in any sort of recent knowledge of this having been on their register for allotments. I don't know if that helps or not. In terms of flood, just to clarify on that, so it's not within a flood zone from rivers, so it's not in flood zone 2 or 3B, which are the Environment Agency designations. It's a surface water flood risk, which is, I'm looking at a map now, which shows it in the 1 in 30 category. As rightly someone said, there are a number of, there's quite a bit of that around that area. But our lead local flood authority, they're called, their sort of job is to basically make sure that these are, that they're satisfied that this won't increase flood risk. And in fact, what this says is that any surface water flooding which happens on this site will be contained within the 17.1 cubic metres of flood storage, which will be underground, and then the idea is basically that then sort of slowly goes into the Thames water, surface water, but it goes at a slow rate, so that it takes that 17 cubic metres out of the flood event and then puts it into the system when that flood event has basically gone. So I have there's quite a big section in the report from paragraph 4.21 from the lead local flood authority on that, if you want to read more. In terms of privacy, that was mentioned. As I say, the northern elevation, the southern elevation would be obscure glazed. There would be some open windows, but we would seek details to ensure that didn't allow views, views directly sort of out into adjoining properties. In terms of light, we've assessed all the surrounding properties, and there is no significant loss of light there. The construction management plan, there's a draft of that, and smaller vehicles will be used than you might use on some of these sites, because obviously we realise there's a restricted access, but that will be subject to details. Some mention made of this being on a sort of sharp bend. Obviously it's on the outside of the bend, so actually when you're coming out of this site you will get a good view either way. It's much better than it being on the sort of outside of a bend. And yes, just in terms of the sustainability, energy efficiency, this application would be required to meet building regulations. There's not any additional things that we'll be securing via planning, and that's in line with policy. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Toby. Right, I'm going to now move the recommendation as set out in the agenda report. May I have a seconder for that, please?
I second that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. And now, do members have any questions of the officers? Councillor Sillett, I'll take you first.
Good evening, Toby. That 17 cubic metres of space to, deal with any flooding, is that designed just to deal with any additional sort of problems that the lack of surface runoff would cause by these new houses, or will it actually aid, the flooding in the area that people have been complaining about? It doesn't sound a lot for 17 cubic metres if there's been chest-high water in the area. I'm just trying to get some sort of sense as to, what effect that storage is going to have on any flooding, or what it's designed to do.
Okay. So it is, I'm just sort of reading through the comments here just to make sure that I get this right. So, yes, it is basically, it is designed to deal with the flood, with the surface water that would come onto this site during a surface water flood event. So, yes, I mean, I suppose, I guess I'm trying to imagine what 17 cubic metres is. A cubic metre is a reasonable sort of volume, and you've got 17 of those. I haven't worked out how much that would be across the whole site, but that's a 1 in 30 year event. So yes, it is the most common, most frequent surface water event. But if you look at the map, it's not the only one here. And improvements over time can be made to surface water for, in various locations, but obviously we're dealing with the current sort of situation.
Okay, so basically they're saying it's not going to make things worse by having the 3 new houses. It's not going to make the area, the loss of that green space isn't going to cause additional problems to the area that's already having problems.
No, I mean, I think it actually, because it will store the water from the site, it's not going to store the water from the other sites, but it will store the water from the site, then actually that results in a betterment, because currently it can't store that on site. I think there's some mention here of the soil type, which isn't one which allows water to infiltrate. These are this is what it says. There'll be underground storage crates, basically, and permeable paving, and there would also be water butts, which would, I think, come from the sort of roof. So it's all of these things would combine together, because I think actually it's the storage underneath that is 17.1. I think in total we might get slightly more when we add the other elements in. But yes, it will improve that site, which I think in theory will improve the others, because that's, I suppose it's likely to mean that, some of the other storage, some of the other water may well then flow onto this site, but that will provide the extra storage effectively. So if we repeated this throughout the area, we might eventually get to a point where there wasn't much surface water flooding.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Giles, did you have a question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I want to touch on biodiversity net gain and urban greening factor, if I may, Toby, because when I read through them, I've got to be honest, I was rather concerned. I note the applicant stated, and it states in the report, that overall there's a 24% gain in biodiversity, which is in excess of the required 10% gain in diversity required for validation. But sometime between August 2022 and February 2023, the site was cleared for development. And if we take a look, as I have, at various Google Street Views and various other things, it prior was very green and very tall. And there's nothing at all in the biodiversity net gain and urban greening assessment that gives a baseline. It looks as if the ecology assessment has been done after the clearance. And so actually when we're looking at that 10% minimum gain, I'm actually really concerned that the calculation is wrong because the baseline was taken, the point at which they cleared the site of all the green and all the vegetation. I just wondered if you could comment on that.
Yeah, on my, I don't have the report in front of me. I will try to get it up, but thank you. Oh no, so yeah, no, I've got that report. I haven't got the actual ecology report. That's fine. Let me just get that one. So, I mean, obviously, somebody is entitled to clear their site. They don't need permission to do that. Our ecology officer has reviewed this, and they're satisfied with what's going in. Let me just get to there. See if there's anything which would help here. Yeah, so I mean, ultimately, the ecology officer doesn't look at all applications, but they have looked at this one, and they consider this is acceptable subject to conditions. I think you talked about the urban greening factor score and that's mentioned in here as 0.4, which is in line with policy.
But if I may, sorry, just to push on this further, because the policy is 10%, but my concern is that actually the calculation is wrong. The biodiversity net gain report states at the end of toward the beginning of the document, in terms of the measurement of the gain, that much of the bare ground of the site has been inputted as, for instance, a cereal crop. It's described as a bare ground, but actually we were there, and there's a fair amount of vegetation. I wouldn't describe that as a bare ground. And furthermore, if I may, the arboricultural report states that a survey was done in June 2022, and that there were trees on site, mostly young. But then if we're looking further along the way here, the report concludes that there are no on-site trees affected by the development, which would sound to me like all of the young on-site trees were chopped down shortly after the tree survey for development, which obviously would significantly impact the percentage when it comes to biodiversity net gain. And so I'm just wondering really what requirements there are for a baseline when it comes to biodiversity net gain, because as I'm reading it and looking at all the information in the round, I'm not convinced there is a 10% biodiversity net gain.
I don't know precisely what's happened in terms of this site, but my understanding is it's been cleared. Obviously, we did go to visit this week, and there was some vegetation there, but my understanding is that if you go back a few months, then there was less vegetation there. So obviously it's taken at at a point when that ecology report is done. And I suppose what is proposed is a number of trees, native hedging, etc., which and quite a bit of this site will remain open and not hard surfaced. So and you particularly around the edges where you've got hedging and trees. So yes, we've at the end of the day, our ecology officer has reviewed all of this, and it's them that's come to this conclusion. Obviously, we've taken their professional opinion in that, but certainly looking at the site, this has got lots of green assets, effectively.
Thank you. And just one final question on a different matter, if I may. Within the site, there's the public right-of-way toward the northeast of the site that goes through to Queen's Road. Do you know the purpose, if you like, of the right-of-way? Normally they're added for a reason, and I think really what I'm trying to push on really is the point around allotments, because if it was used as a community green space, it would make sense for there to be a public right-of-way between Queen's Road and Woodfield Gardens. It just seems an odd passage, if you like, if for no other purpose. You may not know the answer, but I thought it was worth asking.
Yeah, I don't know whether it's the right of way, but certainly I think there's an access, as there are to the back of other properties in Queen's Road. You have those accesses which, to give access to rear gardens, effectively. I don't know this public right of way, but certainly it does appear that it provided some access to this site at some point. But I don't know anything more than that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Henderson? Oh, sorry. Councillor Massimi?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. I've got quite a few questions. Councillor Giles answered some of the biodiversity one that I had, so thanks for that. I want to look first at safety and fire prevention. I would like to go to point 12 and look at 12.2. And I would like to suggest that the recommendation is not to have just 2 of the 3 property fitted with the requirement, which is the, I'm looking for the exact word, bear with me. So I'm be specific, the AWFSS. I would like all 3 properties, because when one property catch fires, the other one will ultimately get impacted, so are the neighbor properties. So that's one of the conditions I would like to suggest, if it's possible to add. The entire set of property must be fitted with this fire prevention measure, and not just 2 out of 3 as suggested. That's a question for you, Toby, if that's something that you find acceptable or that we can add to it. Yeah, I'll ask the rest afterwards.
Let me put that on. So yeah, so as you say, because some of the properties, or it's all, I think you need to be able to access all of the property, including the rear, to within 45 metres. But so it's been suggested that these are fitted with automatic water fire suppression system. Yeah, okay. Well, so I suppose we've discussed this with the council's building control officer, so they're happy with this, and the fire strategy reflects that. But I'm just going to see what the condition.
Just for clarification, are they like a sprinkler system, these letters? Is that what they mean? Yeah, just for clarification for everybody. Thanks.
So at the moment, the condition 6 says the development shall be implemented in accordance with that submitted fire safety strategy, which our building control are happy with, and ultimately that's, albeit they don't have to go to our building control, but they will be using the same regulations effectively. So you're saying you would like that change so that we ask them to submit a new, ultimately they need to submit a new fire safety strategy. We can ask them to to do that. But I suppose I'm just trying to think through your logic. So you're saying that because
The logic is those are terraced house. They are not semi-detached. They are not bridge houses. Therefore, when one property catch fires, they will be impacting the nearby property, respectively of the distance. And I think safety and regulation is one thing. We need to be ahead and above. I'd rather be safe than sorry. So if we can just add, because of the distance, the third one, that will help a lot in terms of overall safety for the site.
I suppose just thinking about it, obviously the properties, or these are going to obviously be built new. I think the wall thicknesses these days is 30 centimetres, which would be a solid fire protection between those two properties. So I think if one did catch fire, I think there would be every expectation that the next one wouldn't catch fire.
Well, that's an expectation, but you have outside cladding which are made out of flammable material potentially. I believe some of them are white but still wood render. You also have heat transfer. If it's possible, I would like to have this as a condition. If it's something that the fire brigade deems over the top, up to them. But again, I'd rather be safe than sorry, just for a few distance and not cherry pick 2 out of 3 properties on that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I suppose what that I suppose depending on the support for your change, I suppose effectively, then obviously what we'd need to do is ask for details of that. We would potentially put an informative. But I think as what I'm saying is that we've thoroughly looked at this. We don't always consult building control, but obviously we're aware that this isn't fully accessible. So therefore we think we've got something which works. And I suppose in terms of planning, we're relying on their expertise effectively. But, yeah.
Thank you. May I ask, Chair, my next question? Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you, Toby, for the answer. My next question is quite straightforward. Again, 11.8. There is, I don't think it's a requirement, it's a recommendation that in terms of quality of building, the minimum height will have to be 2.5 meter. I would like this not to be a recommendation, but a condition in order to make sure that we don't end up having very low ceiling on those properties. Is it possible? 11.8.
Yeah, so a section has been submitted which demonstrated that floor to ceiling heights 2.5 metres would be achieved. So ultimately what we're approving are the drawings which I think would show the 2.5 metre height. We know the top floor varies in height, but the other two must be at least 2.5 metres on the drawings, and they have to comply with those drawings.
Okay, so they must be 2.5 metre height, with the exceptions of the eave or the under the roof, correct? They must be not. It would be nice to. I just want to make sure that the wording is very clear. It is 2.5 metre minimum on ground floor and first floor. Yeah.
So if you, I think the measurements were the eaves were 5.9 metres. So if we take 2 lots of 2.5 from that, we've got 0.9. So logically, with whatever you might need between for floors and ceilings, then that does seem to work. But ultimately, we would be approved if this gets approved. We will put on the decision notice the drawings, which one of which would show the 2.5 metre high floor to ceiling. So they must comply with it. Yes, absolutely. They've got to build in accordance with the drawings.
Thank you. My last question is maybe a bit long, as often. Drainage. I looked at a map and I looked at the actual ground. About 45% are going to be built, give or take. 55% remain topsoil, the northwest of the garden or the back of it, which is fine. But what I'm very surprised is I like the fact that the pavings are permeable, but I'm very surprised to see that on drawing, if I can point you out to the right numbers, 1126, which is the planning property for the drainage layout, there are quite a few things that I would like to ask. The drive construction details, it's great to have a permeable paving, but if it's to have a non-permeable membrane below the substrate, the whole point is that it will basically, it's an underground river which will not be actually going into the soil. Now, I understand the front of the property in the south-facing section does have, in front of the free property, what is basically described as a proposed land drain. That is all okay for the water in front of the garage. It's definitely not okay for the driveway access, which does not have any drainage, which does not have any indication as to where that water will go other than in the adjacent street or property on each side. And the drain is only in the front of the property. Therefore, my question is, if this is something that the design will ensure that all the front of the property, and there is still a question mark around all the driveway, where it will be turning into a river towards the main road, if I may say, can we make sure that this is actually very, very well designed in a way that it all channeled through the drain? And because there are none in the back, I will therefore ask that the decking in the back remain decking on pilotis, which is not decking on hard ground, which prevent water to actually go into the water table, but also add the conditions that because of the amount of non-permeable surface on the land, that going forward, no extension can be granted in the back of any of those property, which will prevent further water to actually go into the topsoil and water table. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. So in terms of the sort of hard surfacing, effectively, which is permeable paving, and your concern about that was that underneath that, then you've got
You have the substrate and you have a membrane.
Yeah, which then stops the water.
Which is fine as long as it's channeled through the drainage
Yeah.
sections, but that doesn't cover everything on the west side, on the northwest, which all goes and flows into the main road, which is basically the corner of Woodfield Gardens.
Yeah. So I'm just looking at what the conditions that we've put on say. Okay, so we have condition 17, which shows prior to commencement of groundworks, excluding site investigations and demolition, the applicant must submit a revised drainage layout to show the location of all the proposed drainage components, including the permeable pavings, water butts, and the connectivity of the system. Also show pipe numbers, gradients, pipe sizes, etc. So
basically, just to resume, the only drainage for the water surface, which is basically the risk you describe as there's a surface water flood risk here. Mm-hmm. The only drainage that actually absorbed and is designed to absorb this water is actually starting and pointing from the corners of the unit 1 all the way to unit 3, and then goes into the new sewage where the existing old one is, towards the northeast entrance. My question is, you have all the southwest entrance towards Woodfield, plus the driveway where they reversed, plus some of the front of it in front of the bin that is not covered by any drains.
Yeah.
The logic is, because of the radius of the property, that it will all flood back into Woodfield Garden unless there's a preventive measure placed and designed to stop this from happening.
So, and you're saying that would go across the surface effectively?
Absolutely, because there is a permeable membrane underneath, which will basically, anything that is not sucked into that limited sections of the drains will then end up in the sewage, in the main road, in the corner of Woodfield.
Yeah. I mean, obviously we're asking for a drainage layout. So we will be getting that, and that will be reviewed by our lead local flood officer. So it seems that we've covered that in that we can we can ask if there's any wording of that which you would like to be changed. I think this wording came from them. If there's any wording which you think we need to change, then certainly we can do. But ultimately, we're going to be getting something we can certainly take account of your points. We can put that. One other thing we could put that as an informative to say we want to make sure these particular points are taken account when we look at condition 17. Just looking at, and then obviously then it goes on to 18. That's when it's got to be implemented. So it's got to be implemented, managed, maintained, etc. And there'll be a management maintenance plan. So So I guess informative would ensure that these extra elements are considered if they haven't already been considered. There's lots going on in this condition.
They haven't. Not on the drawing that I have in front of me.
No, but this does say the applicant must submit a revised drainage layout. So
they highlighted the potential risk, I guess, based on that. Okay. Yes, as long as the entire perimeters of the property is safely going into a dedicated drain, which is at the moment what they call the proposed land drain, I'll be happy and make sure that nothing goes back into the general sewage or even worse in Woolfield Garden.
No, and I think that's the. The intention is to get this stored in on the site, and then it obviously then eventually goes off the site. There's various sort of options. You have to go basically through a sort of hierarchy, don't you, to kind of get to the best solution for the site, which is I think where we've got to, but obviously we're going to need those details to make sure it works.
Thank you. And the other questions which I ask you, which is as a result of the, just to rephrase, surface water flood risk, could we put conditions that no extension can be built in the back going forward to prevent any more restrictions on it? There is restrictions on.
I think there is a condition.
Yes, they have to come back to the local planning authority to get permission. So presumably we would be
to get permission for any type of extension, not the minimum 6 meters.
Yeah, it does.
So yeah, we have condition 15, no additions or enlargements, and condition 16, no detached buildings either. So yeah.
Anderson.
I'll be quick. Just around the construction plan, because although it's a finite period it will take to build this, if it's approved tonight, it is disruptive. So just a couple of the first thing is that the construction plan is quite detailed, but I'm concerned that either neighbours on either side are fully aware of what's happening at any point in time. So if there is a point that the road has to be closed, then because of what's coming into the site, then that's fully communicated to the neighbours. And in a previous one we've done recently, we've expanded the construction plan to actually include proper communication with the neighbours. Can we do something like that, just to make sure? I've just got one more thing.
Certainly, if that isn't part of the standard procedure, obviously there's a benefit to communication both ways, because obviously if there isn't communication and then something turns up and can't access the site, then it doesn't work for the person trying to build the properties either. So I don't know precisely what it says, but certainly if it isn't, if it isn't standard, we can certainly add an informative to say that it should include that, and obviously the applicant's here to hear that as well. I think let me just double check what's the. I don't know, you may know whether there's a condition which says that we need that. I think it's a draft at the moment, so I think it should then be a submission to us, so we can take account of that, yeah.
And just another quick question. again around, well, it's probably beyond the construction plan, but just making sure that if there's any damage to either neighbouring property, that's fully rectified. Is that something we need to put in there?
It is in the management plan that every effort will be to ensure that the existing properties will not be damaged in any way during the construction.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. I mean, the access as it comes between the two properties is not very narrow. It's narrower as you get. So yes, but obviously they need to make the effort to do that.
Thank you. That's going to be quick.
Question.
I cannot find it on the current document, but I've seen it online, the working hours, and I just want to relay back to what some of the residents have shared earlier around safety for young children and kids. I do recall that it was around 8 a.m. Monday to Friday with slightly restrictions on Saturday and no Sunday, but is it something...
Standard working hours.
Yeah,
the standard working building construction hours in the document.
Yeah. Could we maybe have the starting hours slightly later to make sure that it does not coincide with the school run, if possible, maybe by 45 minutes, so then no work or lorry will be navigating around the morning school run? Thank you.
I think these are basically standard hours which are set ultimately by, I think it's Environmental Health who actually are the keepers of that legislation. Do we have a condition on in relation to that? Whether we do or not, effectively they still have to comply with that 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. And I think the other thing to note about that is it isn't just any building works. This is why Environmental Health are in charge of this. It's noise. It's basically noisy work. So you can turn up at 7 o'clock in the morning and do some internal painting. That's not a problem. So I don't think we're going to be saying that people can't come onto site at a particular time.
Thank you. Councillor Giles, and then I have some questions as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry, while other members have been asking questions, I've been looking up a little bit about the requirements around biodiversity net gain. My understanding is that it is incumbent on the applicant to make sure that any site clearance will require the baseline assessment to include retrospective habitat records data, for example, satellite imagery, and that came in through legislation effective 30th of January 2020. And the Planner industry magazine also adds, local authority planners need to be vigilant in identifying schemes in which the baseline data doesn't look right. Now, it certainly doesn't look right to me on the basis that we know from the documents submitted by the applicant the site was cleared for development. And so my question, Toby, is have you done any scrutiny on the baseline data?
I haven't. I've relied on the ecology officer's review of the documents. So I haven't personally, and I don't think the case officer has either. I think this is in relation to the report. It sets out what the ecology officer has viewed as, and obviously they were aware of what had happened. I think they were in this. It says that they were aware of the sort of recent history that the site had been cleared.
Right, but sorry, forgive me, because whilst that report may well have been given to the ecology officer who, taking it at face value, may say, yep, that's compliant, the documents submitted by the applicant state that the site was cleared, and that seemingly, based on what the ecology assessment states, was done before the ecology assessment, which admits the land was cleared beforehand, and then seemingly before the biodiversity net gain, which if that is the case, surely would mean that there's serious questions over whether we are achieving biodiversity net gain. You know, look, I'm all for sustainable development, but the figures here don't seem right to me. And if there hasn't been scrutiny done, then, you know, I'm not sure based on what the other reports say they're acceptable. But I'll leave it there, Madam Chair, if Toby can't shed any more light on that, but it just doesn't seem right to me.
Councillor Sillett.
I think Councillor Giles raises, you know, a valid concern. The trouble for us on this committee is we've got no evidence to judge if there's not been a report. But when we did the site visit, I didn't see any evidence of large trees that had been removed. It was mostly brambles with a bit of...
But you can't speak from the gallery.
Well, I've heard that there were 3 trees there. I mean, I am aware that the applicant wants to plant 33 trees there. So all I'm saying is it's very difficult for us to, even though it's a valid concern, I just don't think we're going to have a basis of any evidence to be able to make a decision based on that.
If I may, Madam Chair, I think the evidence is quite clear because there's Google Maps Street Views going back some years. But I would also go back to the applicant's own documents submitted. The later preliminary ecology survey shows cut stumps of tree sites marked in their drawings. So, you know, if we look in detail at the applicant's own submissions, I think it's actually quite clear.
Toby, do you want to come back on that? I mean, they have cleared the site and some trees there, which people have seen. Thank you. But these aren't necessarily relevant in some ways. It's not they're not TPOs. They're not bringing any TPOs down. In fact, the document says there aren't any, but Toby said there was one, which I can only imagine is the one in the corner.
No, you're quite right, they're not TPOs, but if we're looking at the biodiversity net gain of the site, and in that we're not including trees that were there, that will then produce an inaccurate percentage figure for biodiversity
You're
net
saying
gain.
It's a false presumption.
Yes, there's no baseline, which is required by legislation.
Right. Toby, I don't know anything about this, so you're going to have to kind of help me out here, because if we don't have the reports, then we don't have them.
Yeah. So I suppose in paragraph 15.6, it says biodiversity net gain calculation being submitted was based on Natural England's biodiversity matrix identifies a biodiversity net gain of 446%. What I'm just going to check is in terms of the conditions that we've got, because obviously ultimately we...
Can I just say at the end of that, it says that whilst this is disappointing, nonetheless acknowledge that biodiversity net gain is not legally mandated. And I believe it's not coming until 2024. So is that relevant here? That's going to throw that question out. Councillor Henderson.
It also says it is accepted that this level is based on the current state of the site. So actually it acknowledges the fact that actually they're basing on the current state of the site. Okay.
Councillor Giles.
Thank you. Sorry, can I get some clarity? Because it's my understanding that from a government perspective, mandatory BNG isn't a legal requirement, but that BNG is required in planning policy terms through the MPPF. Toby, would you be able to comment?
I don't know.
Let me just what I've got to the condition. Obviously, what we've got in terms of the condition is the development wishes permission related shall be carried out in accordance with the recommendations, mitigation measures and enhancements set out in section 4 of the submitted preliminary ecological appraisal report. and planning statement, and those shall be implemented. So I guess just bearing that in mind, obviously that is proposing an ecological gain from I suppose, or providing some ecology effectively. I suppose, one question is, well, are we happy with that, or do we need a further report, and therefore you could have a compliance condition instead? Let me just have a look at the MPPF. Sorry, I will be a couple of seconds, because I need to. Read what that says. Do you know the paragraph?
I do. Sorry, forgive me. You have to ask them through questions at this point. But paras 174 and 179. So
Thank you.
179, plans should promote the conservation, restoration, enhancement of priority habitats, etc. And this is the important bit to me. Identify and pursue opportunities for securing measurable net gains for biodiversity. It goes on, and then again relevant. Including opportunities to incorporate biodiversity improvements in and around developments, especially where this can secure measurable net gains for biodiversity. So those are the two paras.
Yeah. So obviously, the conditions that have been condition 11 basically, which is where we've got to. At the end of this, in terms of the sort of latest document being 24th of August 2023, our ecology officer is satisfied that deals with ecology. Now, obviously, the only way to improve ecology is to go further than that report, and potentially, yes, we could say, well, we want a report to be submitted, and that has to then evidence these things you're talking about. But let me just have a look at
I shan't labour the point further, Madam Chair, if you don't feel it's useful to discussion.
No, the point is validly made, but I think going forward, there are conditions that we can put in to enhance the biodiversity with, as you say, the planting of 33 trees, extra bat boxes, and what I would call sort of more natural fences rather than having fences there. We can have those in conditions, and those would improve the ecology there.
I can't see anything within here that I guess it's for you to consider, but obviously I can't see anything in here in the NPPF that says that what we're doing isn't the right approach. Yeah.
Councillor Massimi.
Thank you, Chair. I'm delighted to hear that you've said about the condition regarding biodiversity. Therefore, I would like to ask if we can add the following conditions: that each or any of the tree planted or replanted must be semi-mature with a minimum trunk of 2 meter height, and a wide variety and range of native tree, not just the same types stick to each other's, of 50 centimeters in height. So proper real tree to replace the potential loss, if you want, or improve the current 33 real semi-mature trees. That's what I'm talking about in terms of biodiversity. And native trees of various type, please, because it is not really specified here. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. So this is in relation to condition 9, the detailed landscape and planting plan, isn't it? Basically. So you're saying you want these to be mature specimens, basically, which obviously isn't specified here. We could certainly add that as an informative. What I'm slightly need to be aware of is obviously. In terms of if you're putting in more mature, then
it's fine. It's semi-mature, doesn't matter. It's the rootstock that makes a difference in tree height and the actual roots. And I'm not worried about the roots. If you plant the tree next to each other, they will actually, this called companion plant. The one that grows higher will grow faster, and the one that do not need will you just vary the rootstock, and you will have tree that remains 2 meters high, and over will go 5 meters. It depends on the type of base you're using for those fruit tree, for example. So it's not a challenge. You can plant 30 fruit trees next to each other, and they will not overgrow or have bigger things, but they need to be semi-mature trees, not saplings that are useless, or conifers that we have as copy and paste everywhere around the boundary fence. They need to be native, varied type of tree, which I appreciate. This talk about pollen, fruit trees, etc. Great. Let's just make sure they are semi-mature trees with different rootstock as well. Whatever.
I think you have to be quite careful what sort of trees, because then the roots will be going towards the houses and you don't want that sort of problem. So I think you have to be really cautious about what sort of trees you're going to plant there. Thanks. Councillor Sillett.
Just saying, when there's no evidence of what was there before, presumably if the trees have been removed, there's going to be evidence that they were there, and that could be taken into account to see if it would, skew those biodiversity net gain figures. I mean, if they found, that evidence is still going to be there, isn't it? I didn't see it, but.
Not really. I mean, I ultimately, I guess what will, obviously the applicants here, so that they're here to hear that, but also we will bear that in mind when we look at whatever we can, whatever information we have, and I will, we'll speak to our tree officer when they review this, so they're aware of the thoughts that are going around here. So yeah.
Would you like to debate any more? Or I was going to suggest reading out some of just to go over the conditions, should we be minded to permit, with Toby, just to make sure that we've got everything that we want in there. So if anybody's got any comments now, I'd like to take those. Bars.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Look, I went on the site visit earlier in the week, and there's a site there that currently needs some love. I think, to put it mildly, the site isn't in a good condition. And it was only subsequent to the site visit, sort of drilling down specifically into the technicalities of it, that I began to notice these anomalies with respect to biodiversity. Now, we've had a long discussion on this, and I don't think we're going to get any answers here tonight. But as it currently stands, the ecology and biodiversity net gain, and even possibly the urban green factor assessments, at least by my interpretation, all seem to be in error due to the site being cleared for development, which the developer admits in their preliminary ecology assessment. The PEA says there were no trees on site, but the cut stumps of trees can be seen in the PEA drawing of the site. The design and access statement confirms the clearance also on page 7. You can see through old Google Street Views, just how much vegetation there was before, and demonstrate the size of the clearance. What also concerns me is that within the ecology assessment, there's other inaccuracies and errors, which doesn't give me any confidence in it. One of them saying there are no water bodies within 500 metres. Beverley Brook, by my radius map earlier using a tool online, is within 270 metres of the site, but certainly not further away than 500. And as local representatives, I'm sure even in your mind you can think where Beverley Brook is and see that just isn't quite right. The arboricultural report is dated February 2023 and has no clarification on what happened to the on-site trees. The first report, I might add, notes a survey was done in June 2022 and there were trees on site, mostly young. There's no verifiable baseline information, which is really unhelpful. And so, all in all, I'm not comfortable at the moment on ecological grounds with approving this application. It'll be obviously for the wider committee to make a decision. But I can't in good faith at this time support it when so much of the supporting documents are either plainly wrong or highly dubious. I think I'll leave it there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Giles. Anybody else got any? Councillor Henderson.
I'll probably take a different view. I mean, currently in the borough, we have 900 families living in temporary accommodation. We have 300 families living in nightly accommodation. Here we have 3 very nicely designed 4-bedroom houses. And a site that I wandered around that site on Monday, and it is overgrown. It's lying there. It's not doing a lot. And if we can actually provide housing for families in Kingston, I think it's a very good design, actually. So I'm going to support this application. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Yes, I feel a similar view. And we did have a site in my ward very similar to this. It was on a much smaller site, and 3 terraced family houses were built and are nearly built now, and they did look quite nice. So I'm minded to think that this is a suitable design and plan for this site, based on previous experience of other sites. But what I'd like to do is just, if we were minded to permit, that we would just go over the conditions, Toby, just to make sure that we've got everything tied up nicely. Because we've mentioned a lot about flood risk and drainage and all that sort of thing. So starting off, and if I missed anything, please let me know. The construction management plan, the first thing, obviously protection of the adjacent properties while works are going on. The hours we've mentioned, Councillor Massimi. That is included in the document. Am I right in thinking, Toby? Is everybody happy with the management plan?
Happy, I don't know, but if we can change...
Well, it's in the...
Yeah, I mean, it is, and I understand, and this is what the law states, but I understand the answer from Toby around the noise impact, and I therefore realize that we cannot prevent vehicles from accessing the site during those key hours, so I'm not happy, but I take this as that's how it works. Thank you.
What you said there, noisy something, and I missed the second word.
The limitations of working hours is based on noise and not based on traffic, from what I understand. My concern was around traffic during rush hours and school drop-off or school hours. But I understand from Toby that this is not how this is drafted under the law. It is drafted on you can do the work as long as you're not noisy, and therefore I cannot prevent vehicles, HGV or any other trucks to actually come at this time of the day if they wish to. That's my understanding. So I'm not happy, but that's how it is.
Presentation, they will have to present their bins at the curtilage, at the pavement on bin day, and take them back to their properties. Is everybody happy with that? Yeah, okay. Landscaping, I've got, I'd like to add something to sort of like soft, trees and bushes along that perimeter, which is backing onto the Cromwell Road open space to make it more natural. I don't know what the applicant has in mind, but I think sticking, a 5-foot fence there is not going to be particularly nice. That's a personal opinion. Other people may have other things, but I do also bear in mind future residents of these properties will still want to feel secure in their properties. So I don't know how we kind of adjust that. Sorry? No, but there is a tree in the corner there which is going to be retained, isn't it, Toby? So that does give a lot of nice natural coverage there. But towards the other bit, sort of planting that would grow and be more natural looking than, you know, a 5-foot fence. But
the trees along there.
yeah. There is a very low bit at the moment, which is like a little hedge, this sort of shrub this size, but something a little bit more. I mean, it could be a sort of prickly plant as well, for security reasons, if you know what I mean. But yeah, that was what I thought about the landscaping and the trees. Anybody else got anything to add about the landscaping? No?
Well, the semi-mature tree, as I
Sorry,
mentioned.
I didn't quite.
The semi-mature tree, as I mentioned, we want proper tree, not just saplings. That's important.
Yeah, not just a stick.
Yeah, so 2 meter height for a trunk, it's perfectly fine. If it's a different rootstock, it will not grow more, depending on what you choose. But we don't want to have something which is 25 centimeters. We want some proper trees, as shown on the drawing there. Thank you.
Thank you. Make a note of that. The next thing I've got. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Just going back to getting some idea of how many trees were removed and what sort of size they were, it'd be really nice to have had that information, because then we could actually make even a rough idea as to whether there is any genuine net biodiversity net gain there. I don't know if that's possible to do that retrospectively now. And I think Councillor Massini makes a good point. You know, quite often you see that there's going to be X amount of trees planted, and they're rather spindly little, tiny little things that probably half of them won't survive anyway. So it would be really nice to, ensure that there is a genuine net gain there, however we do it.
Planting policy is normally 2 for 1, isn't it, Toby? So, I mean, if they're going to put 33 new trees in, have 15 sort of gone? I don't know, because we don't know how many trees, and we haven't got the.
There was mention of 3 trees coming down,
trees
and
gone.
a number of young trees, but we don't know.
We don't know how many.
We just don't have the information.
Just to clarify, the condition 9 does say that shall thereafter be maintained for 5 years to the satisfaction of the local planning authority. Any trees or shrubs which die during the period shall be replaced at the beginning of the following planting season. So that's in there. So what you're saying here, I will be generally adding as informative to refer back to the condition. Is that right? Or are we trying to amend the wording of the condition?
I really want to make sure it's a condition and it's not a nice to have. It needs to be a must have. So whatever wording we want to put, the condition is you must do it in order to, not it would be nice if. That is really specific. Otherwise, we're just giving advice, and in the end, they can do whatever they want.
So currently it says about the trees, yeah.
So currently it says,
amongst other things, yes.
Sizes of all plants, and particularly trees at time of planting, is one of the things which will be incorporated. So, I mean, thing is, we can't be precisely, if we're precisely specific in here. We're asking for details.
Semi-mature, varied native trees with a trunk of a height of at least 2 meters. If you go in any shop, garden centers, you can buy those. I mean, it's just common sense. It's just, we just want to prevent someone, just as we say earlier, putting just 20 centimeters high cypress tree everywhere.
Right, so which shall be at least semi-mature size and semi-mature and native.
Native, varied.
Sorry, was there?
A wide range of species, not just 2 types. Again, biodiversity.
A native. Okay, and okay, I will try to work out some wording that will go in there. Okay, so that's condition 9.
Yeah, just the next one I had was ecology, so enhancement to the ecology, which is condition 11, I believe, which is already in there in the document. It just mentions wildlife-friendly external lighting, native planting, wildlife gaps and things like that, and bat boxes and that to kind of complement what is already been installed in the open space, which the biodiversity officer has mentioned. So that's already in there, just making sure that everybody's happy with that and we don't need to reinforce that. Is everybody okay with that? Okay. And the next item I've got is the flood risk and drainage, which we've talked a lot about. Is everybody happy with that? Councillor Massimi.
Thank you. Again, happy is not the word. I will be happy when I have confirmation that none of the excess water can leak or go towards or into Woodfield Gardens or the neighbourhood property with a proper water table drains across the perimeter of the properties.
So can we have an additional condition for that, Toby, or is that already?
Well, so we have condition 17, which says that they must submit a revised drainage layout. So
on 17.5, yeah.
So I feel that if we,
I'm happy with the revised. Don't know what the next one's going to look like, but maybe we can just pinpoint that the driveway access must be also included within that revised plan to safely store the water in the property and not towards Woodfield Garden.
So you're talking specifically about the access road and
access roads and a third
has drainage as well.
Yeah, we has none.
Oh no, it hasn't at the moment.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. So I want to make sure there's drainage and that drainage is efficient and goes back into the property and on the northeast sections of the actual sewage.
Okay. Well, I think certainly we will. I think in this case, if we highlight these this within an informative that links back to condition 17, then we can ensure that that is considered. I can't. I don't understand this technically to be able to say, oh yes, we can definitely do that, but certainly I will make sure that it's considered. Yeah. Okay.
And the next one I have is the fire safety, which Councillor Massimi wanted all three properties to have this sprinkler system, not just the two that were furthest away from the road where the fire engine would access. So have we added that, Toby? Or is that?
So I'm just looking around with the conditions. So I think the condition, I think currently says that there's a approved fire strategy, and it shall be done in accordance with that. Condition 6 shall not be implemented in accordance with the submitted fire safety strategy. So that sets out the 2 rather than the 3, which is ultimately where it would, what building control would be insisting upon.
I know I do appreciate it, Toby, and I understand we talked about it earlier. We meet the minimum requirement or the legal requirement, but that's irrelevant. It's not just, rules and regulation would change. I'd rather be safe and ask just to consider that the 3 properties based on the design, the layout, and not just simply based on the distance will benefit from the same safety measures. Hopefully we'll never have to use it, but one day we might be, grateful for that. So just, let's suggest that we will strongly recommend to have all property fitted with the same fire prevention system. That's my recommendation, or that my request, if I may say, please.
So that then I take it you're happy that would then be an informative to say that we would like, or whatever words, all 3 properties to have sprinklers.
That system. Yeah.
Okay, I will think of some better wording, but yes.
Thanks. I think that's all from me. I've spoken quite a long time, but anybody got anything else before we go to a vote and wrap this up? No? Everybody happy? Okay, right. Moving on to the vote, can I have a show of hands for those in favour of this application?
It's 4 in favour, Chair.
Those against? 1.
1 against.
Thank you very much. That is permitted, that is agreed, that application. I have no further items from the Chair, so I close this meeting at 21:18. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much to everybody who came along to speak tonight. It's not easy coming and speaking in front of the mic, in front of everybody, and I really appreciate your participation tonight. So thank you very much indeed for everybody who came along. And thank you to the committee and to the officers. Thank you.